This is the town of Chora, which is one of the legal towns for Bedouin to settle, that Israel provides services for, builds schools, builds an infrastructure. But if we zoom out a little bit, you can see the entire Negev is filled with illegal communities of Bedouin. They're really all over the place. Every other one that we're looking at right now, everything that you can see, is an illegal Bedouin village. Some of them, again, they start off with little shacks. Very often you'll see that they have a tent that they receive visitors in, but next to the tent they'll have their house. They'll have satellite TV. But it's not like they're concentrated in one area that people could just say, oh, let's make it legal. From where I'm standing over here, literally a 360-degree view, you can see illegal communities, illegal Bedouin communities in all directions. This is what the Negev looks like today. It's not empty. It's filled with these Bedouin structures. And this is not, and they just claim the land. There's no legal provision for that whatsoever. Leftists are coming in and saying, oh, they should be allowed to stay, they should be allowed to stay. But a state can't be run that way. You have to have the rule of law. They do not accept the rule of law. They're building wherever they want, and too many people are saying that Israel doesn't have the right to demolish. It just cannot go on this way. This is not something that can last. This is not something that's going to be able to be sustainable. This is Lakia. Lakia is a town in the Negev that the Israeli government set aside for Bedouin to move in. But one of the solutions that the Israeli government came up with is to give them a series of towns, about 7 of them, and let them build on this land, and that way they can live there, and they have their spaces, and everything should be fine. Unfortunately, it doesn't work this way. Here's the town. You can see that it has many places that are built up. You'll also notice that there are places that are not built. There's the green parts in between the land. The green parts are parts that in the 1960s, the Bedouin created their own land claims on parts of the Negev. Israel said, hey, if you have any parts of the Negev that you say that belong to you, tell us, we will keep it in mind, and we'll see what happens. With, maybe down the line we'll figure out a way of giving it to you legally. In the end, there were several court cases, actually a couple of hundred court cases, and the Bedouin didn't win any of the cases. And they were very upset. They think they have a piece of paper that says, I own this land, but the Israeli government just said, no, this is a piece of paper that shows you have a claim to the land. In the end, they didn't win any of it. Now, any of those land claims that they had are open because their fellow Bedouin are not going to allow them to build, or not going to allow anybody to build on the land that are being claimed by their brothers or their cousins. So, for example, in this part of Lakia, you'll see there's the beginnings of infrastructure. There are roads that are being built. There's it's possible there's like one house over there, but the entire area over here where this hill is actually a big land claim from one Bedouin family. So the only structures that are on there belong to that one family. But even though this area of Lakia is really meant for Bedouin from all over the Negev to be able to move to, nobody's going to be able to move there because the Bedouin themselves wouldn't allow them to move there. So even though Lakia should have, is zoned for some 35,000 Bedouin to live in, because of this, one reason is that it's not completely filled up, is because of these land claims, only about 12,000 live here, and the rest of them still live in illegal structures. The Bedouin problem in the Negev has been festering, and it really started back in Ottoman times, back when there really was no land registration. The British tried to improve it a little bit, but the thing to keep in mind is that this is a really complicated problem that's been going on for decades, even before Israel was born. But the fact is, the Israeli government is not blameless in this either. They also they pretty much ignored the problem for many years. Like the example we just gave, in which they said we would allow land claims, but in the end they didn't allow any land claims. But the Bedouin think that they have them. It's really a mess. there's really no good, easy solution. We're going to try to talk about one a little bit later. But there's another layer of complication that's being added to this whole thing. Because as the Bedouin have moved from being a nomadic people, where they had clans, and they had central authority on top of each other, that social structure is disappearing. And as a result of that, the Islamists are starting to move in. So what we're looking at over here is there's a mosque. There are several mosques that are around here. The old mosques were the ones that were done by the Bedouin themselves, and that was their gathering place. But the new ones, you can tell a difference about them. The new ones have domes. Especially this one over here has a golden dome. Those new mosques were actually owned or actually being controlled by the Islamic movement of the northern part of Israel. Traditionally, the southern Islamic movement has been more moderate, more willing to be able to compromise with Israel. The northern movement, and you know their leader, Raid Salah, and he's been, you know, on my blog many times, is always trying to incite, always trying to stir up trouble. He is trying to increase his influence on the Negev Bedouin. And he's not the type of person that's going to be compromising. Now there's the social structure of the Bedouin fall apart as they are forced to move, you know, to lose their nomadic lifestyle and to move into permanent communities, which is really, it's happening inevitably. It's nothing really to do with Israel. But the people that are trying to go in and take over the social structure are the people who are the biggest enemies of Israel altogether. So we have a lot of moving parts over here, a lot of things that are causing problems. And this is just, you know, in a microcosm, you can see a lot of it right here in Lakia. There's one other issue that needs to be understood about Lakia. It's not only the Israeli government that's at fault, but the Bedouin themselves, some of them will happily move into any land that's given to them by the Israeli government to live on. And they'll do it there, you know, why not? The Israeli government's giving them land. But it doesn't mean that they want to adhere to the regular rules that a person that lives in a town have to live on. Within Lakia itself, even though there are plenty of legal buildings and plenty of legal lots, there are also very many illegal structures, illegal stores, illegal buildings that are throughout the entire town, because when it comes down to it, the Bedouin do not, in general, do not respect the laws of the land of Israel or the laws of the local community that they should be adhering to. To them, they can build wherever they feel like. They don't have to worry about whether they're building in the middle of a road that's planned. For example, we can see over here, this is apparently one of them. The road over here is going nowhere. There's a road that looks like a nice wide road that they started building, but it ends. And it doesn't really do anything. It appears to be, I can't say this 100%, but it appears to be because of the buildings that are at the end of the road. Those buildings were built by the Bedouin, and the structures were built because they felt like building it wherever they felt like it. And that messes up the entire community. You cannot have a working, normal community in which the people feel that they can build and do whatever rules they want. It just doesn't work in civic society. So there's a lot of problems over here. And again, it's a very, very complex situation. And so when you hear people talk about, oh, Israel's doing X terrible things to the Bedouin of the Negev, they're kicking them out, you have to understand this is not a simple thing by any means. This is the water tower that Israel built in order to be able to service the people of Lakia. You'll notice that it looks more like a military installation than a water tower. It has barbed wire, it has security cameras all over the place. It's clearly trying to defend itself against something. What is that something? What happened was the residents of Lakia, or at least some of them, would actually come up and do graffiti and damage the water tower that was serving the people of Lakia. They were actually damaging the water that was meant to help their town. And only about a year ago did Israel decide that they had to rebuild the entire tower. They ripped out the other tower, which was already damaged. It was filled with graffiti, anti-Israel graffiti, anti-Jewish graffiti, and they had to build a water tower in order to give the residents water even though some of the residents themselves were working against it. If you look, you can see the ruins of the old water tower that was there. And in fact, it's a little hard to see right now, but there's a swastika that was drawn over there. There's graffiti that was drawn on there. And, you know, this is the ruins of the old one that's right next to this new one. But again, it just shows you that things are never exactly as they seem.
There's no easy solution to this problem. I spoke to representatives of Regavim, which is the NGO that watches the land issue not only in the Negev but really all over Israel. And they are surprisingly supportive of the Bedouin. They're not trying to do anything mean to them. They are Israeli citizens, and they needed to be treated with respect. They're more than willing to admit that many of the mistakes that were made in the past by Israel. And they're also more than willing to say that Israel needs to spend billions and billions of shekels in order to properly house these Bedouin. But at the exact same time, the rule of law must be enforced. And Israel has not been consistent in enforcing these laws on the Bedouin. And that is as much of a problem as Israel's ignoring the problem for so many years and treating the Bedouin badly as they did, especially in the first 2 decades or so of the state. Israel has to enforce all of the land laws that exist. It has to be merciless in knocking down the illegal structures. It has to ensure that the Bedouin do have a proper place to live. And it also, surprisingly, one of the other points made is Israel also has to enforce the rule of law as far as polygamy is concerned, because a lot of the Bedouin will have multiple wives, officially divorcing one to marry the next, but living with all of them and having children with all of them, and that also ends up being a huge economic drain. All of these things together, with patience, has a chance of solving the problem. But what's very clear right now is if nothing's done, the problem's only going to get worse and worse.